Hello and welcome to this on-demand course material. If you weren't able to attend class last week, either on campus or even in real time via WebEx, because of the state of emergency in Tokyo now, I've put together this short video recording of some of the content we covered in class. Actually, I'll break it into two videos. So please, when you have time, watch the content, and I'll make a little quiz on Manaba to help you review some of the content. Next week and the week after, so the next 2 Mondays, will also be on-demand course material to respect the rules on campus about the state of emergency. And then our next class will be on campus on the 17th of May. Good luck with the content. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to send me email or post a question on the forum on Manaba. I'll try to answer as quickly as I can. Good luck. Okay, so let's take a look at the slides that we used in class on the 26th. Again, if you were in class and you want to just review these, they're available for you. But if you were not able to attend class because of the state of emergency, now I have made these available for you as well. And please note that next week and the week after, so May 3rd and May 10th, the state of emergency will still be in effect. And so we will not be meeting on campus. And also we will not be meeting in real time via WebEx either. Rather, I will put some lesson content, kind of like this video, on Manaba for you to access whenever it's convenient for you throughout the week. You'll need to complete the content each week, and then so May 3rd will be when I put up the material for that week, and then May 10th I'll put up new material for the next week, and then May 17th we'll be meeting on campus again as usual. Okay. Now, the content of last week's lesson was to continue the discussion of meaning, because during the previous lesson, we had learned about entailment and contradiction, two elements of meaning. And the point I want to make is that entailment and contradiction are properties of sentences. It's properties of language. It's not the people who make entailments or contradictions when they speak. Rather, it's the linguistic or language property of the sentences themselves. When we saw the example, Mama Bear is in front of Papa Bear, for example, and we learned that there's an entailment, right? That if this sentence is true, if it's true that Mama Bear is in front of Papa Bear, we know logically and automatically that it must also be true that Papa Bear is behind Mama Bear. That's the meaning of the expressions in front of and behind. And so this relationship is known as entailment. The first sentence entails the second sentence. In fact, in this particular case, it's an example of double entailment or two-way entailment because if the second sentence is true, then it must also be the case that the first sentence is true. Now, it's not always the case that entailment is two-way like this, but in this case, it is. We had a few examples like the painters broke the window actually entails several different sentences. Right? It entails that someone broke the window. It entails that the painters broke something, and it entails that the painters did something to the window. And we can emphasize or focus or foreground is the term in pragmatics. We can foreground one of the three entailments by using a special intonation pattern. But take another sentence like the painters raised their prices. Right? If that's true, then we know that it must be false that the painters lowered their prices. Right? The meanings of raised and lowered are opposite. Right? So if the painters raised their prices is true, we know that the second sentence, the painters lowered their prices, must be false. Right? We call this a contradiction. And again, it's a property of the meanings of the words. So we say that the sentences, not the speakers who use them, make the entailments and the contradictions. But today we're going to begin learning about another kind of meaning called presupposition. And presupposition is actually the speakers and not the sentence that makes the presupposition meaning. So entailment and contradiction are a kind of semantic meaning, whereas presupposition is a kind of pragmatic meaning. That the meaning of an utterance in a particular situation by a particular speaker will have a presupposition meaning in addition to the semantic meanings that are entailments or contradictions. Well, let's explore or learn about presupposition a little more. Presupposition, the word, it's a long word made up of three parts. Right? There's the pre, which means before, the suppose, which is like to assume or believe something to be true, and then the shun just is an ending to make that a noun. Right? But basically, suppose means something like something I believe, or something I know is true or I believe to be true. So if I say, I suppose you're going to tell me I should always finish my homework on time. Well, that means you don't even need to say it. I already know that you're going to tell me this. I already assume or believe that it's true that you're going to tell me I should always finish my homework on time. Or another example might be, I suppose the only thing we can do is wait. It's your best guess, what you believe to be true. Well, that's the same meaning of suppose that is in the middle of presupposition, or actually presupposition is how we say that. If I look up suppose in the dictionary, to suppose that something is nantoka nantoka to omo, and that would be a close meaning. The key to know is that presuppositions are facts. Okay, they're something that's true, or at least that the speaker believes to be true before he or she says a sentence. And therefore, when we hear the sentence, we can figure out, we can understand what that speaker must already be thinking based on what he or she said. So this is the key point. Right? The presuppositions are facts a speaker believes to be true before saying a sentence. Okay? So this property of being true is an important one that we use for analyzing language and meaning. So we call this truth value. Right? The truth value of a sentence. And there are two values possible. Right? One truth value is true, and the other truth value is false. So if I were to say to you a sentence, something like, George Washington is the current president of the United States. Is that true or false? Well, it's false if I say that sentence today in 2021. But if we go way back in history to 1790, and someone said George Washington is the current president of the United States, well, at that time it would have been true. So whether this sentence is true or false depends on when it's spoken. Similarly, the Eiffel Tower is in Paris. Well, that's true, right? We know that the Eiffel Tower is in Paris. But if we again went back in time to 1790, there was no Eiffel Tower. So at that time, a sentence like this could not be true. So again, the truth value depends in some degree on when a sentence is uttered or spoken. But in a sentence like, a car is an automobile, well, in this case, it's true, right? The definition of the word car and the definition of the word automobile includes, a car is a kind of automobile. So that meaning is true independent of when it's spoken. Now let's look at a few other examples and think about the truth value. Are these utterances true or false? Here, have a cookie. It's a kind of offer. Here, have a cookie. Is that true or false? Or, be careful of the crumbs. In fact, it seems strange to ask whether it's true or false, right? I can't even answer, I don't know. It doesn't even seem to make sense. Or how about, where was George Washington born? Well, that's a sentence, yes. Is it true? Well, it's a little confusing. How can a question be true? Right? Or, how much did the car cost? Right? If we ask for the truth value of these kinds of sentences, we run into a problem. Right? Commands and questions are sentences that seem to be neither true nor false. It seems strange to even ask what the truth value is. Nevertheless, there is meaning that we can evaluate. Right? So, for example, imagine an utterance like this. So the A sentence, where has Ed looked for the keys? And remember, the quotation marks indicate that this is an utterance. Someone has asked the question. Where has Ed looked for the keys? Well, I can't determine whether that's true or not, but I can determine that it's true that Ed has looked for the keys, right? It doesn't make sense for someone to ask, where has Ed looked for the keys, if Ed hasn't looked for the keys. Therefore, I can evaluate the truth value of this sentence based on the utterance of the question. Someone asks, where has Ed looked for the keys? Well, then I know it's true that Ed has looked for the keys, or at least that the speaker believes Ed has looked for the keys. It's like we're a detective, right? We hear the words and we figure out, we conclude what the speaker must be thinking, what they must know or believe to be true. And in this case, the speaker who asks the question knows or believes that Ed has looked for the keys. How about the B sentence? Did you buy these dry donuts? Well, that's a question. The answer is yes or no. So I can't really evaluate true or false, a truth value for the sentence, for the question. But I can evaluate it for the donuts are dry, because I know the donuts must be dry, because the person says, did you buy these dry donuts? The meaning of the expression, these dry donuts, tells me that the donuts are dry, or at least that the speaker believes the donuts are dry. And so the truth value of the second sentence, the donuts are dry, can be evaluated, right? It's true. How about C, a command? Don't sit on Annie's sofa. Well, again, we know commands don't have truth values by themselves, but they do allow us to determine the truth value of Annie has a sofa. Right? It only makes sense if for someone to ask or to tell us, don't sit on Annie's sofa, if, in fact, Annie has a sofa. So we can conclude, like Conan here, that Annie has a sofa. Or in D, stop being lazy. Well, that utterance only makes sense if you're actually being lazy, or if the person speaking believes you are being lazy. Lucy knows that George is a thief. Now, that does have a truth value, because either she does know it or she doesn't. Right? We can determine that. But we can further determine for certain that George is a thief. When someone says, Lucy knows that George is a thief, the meaning we understand, that we figure out, is that George is a thief. And then Lucy knows that fact. Now, these kinds of meanings, these are what we call presuppositions. These are the facts that the speaker has to presuppose, that the speaker has to know before they make their utterance. So the definition would be something like, something the speaker must believe to be true in order for the utterance to be meaningful. And we, as listeners, understanding the utterance, can then figure out the presupposition based on the language. But notice it's the person who makes the presupposition, not the words themselves. It's not like entailment or contradiction. It's a property of the sentence being uttered. So we could have an utterance like Ed has looked for the keys, which would then directly state the fact. Or we could also have a question, where has Ed looked for the keys? But both of these give us the same information. Right? The first one directly states that Ed has looked for the keys. That's the meaning of the sentence. But that information is also available from the question, where has Ed looked for the keys? Because the question presupposes the event that Ed has looked for the keys. So in the other example, Annie has a sofa, or don't sit on Annie's sofa. Right? Both of these allow us to understand the fact that Annie has a sofa. In the case of Annie has a sofa, that directly states the fact. Don't sit on Annie's sofa, well, that presupposes that Annie has a sofa. Now, having a sofa isn't really an event, it's more a state. So both events and states can be presupposed by questions and commands. Okay, let's look at some more examples. Right? And the question I'd like to ask is whether these sentences presuppose the state at the top. The state says there is a chocolate cake. Okay? So some of these sentences presuppose the existence of a chocolate cake, and other sentences don't. So if you were to hear these sentences as utterances, could you figure out, could you conclude that there really is a chocolate cake? Well, let's look at 1A. Mike might find the chocolate cake in the kitchen. 1B. Mike might find a chocolate cake in the kitchen. 2A. Is Mike giving Annie that chocolate cake? 2B. Is Mike giving Annie a chocolate cake? 3A. Did Mike hide Annie's chocolate cake? 3B. Did Mike hide a chocolate cake? Now, if you look closely, there's a difference in these sentences based on how they express the chocolate cake. In 1A, it's the chocolate cake. In 2A, it's that chocolate cake. In 3A, it's Annie's chocolate cake. But all three of these are examples of what we call a definite noun phrase. So the something, or that something, or something that belongs to someone. So the N apostrophe S is a name. So Annie's chocolate cake. All three of those definite NPs, definite noun phrases, presuppose that there is a chocolate cake. If I hear someone utter any of those three sentences, then I know there is a chocolate cake. But the B sentences all have a, right? The indefinite article. right? You can see they begin with a, all three of them. And you probably remember from high school English grammar, right? A is known as the indefinite article. So it introduces indefinite NPs, or indefinite noun phrases. In those cases, we cannot presuppose, or there is no presupposition that there is a chocolate cake. Okay? So in 1b, Mike might find a chocolate cake in the kitchen, but maybe there's no chocolate cake, so he won't. Or 2b, is Mike giving Annie a chocolate cake? No, he's giving her cookies. There is no chocolate cake. That could be, right? Or 3b, did Mike hide a chocolate cake? No, he didn't hide anything. There is no chocolate cake. That would be possible. Whereas in the examples where there is the presupposition that there is a chocolate cake, we can't tell that kind of story, right? Did Mike hide Annie's chocolate cake? No, there is no chocolate cake. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Okay? Did Mike hide Annie's chocolate cake only makes sense if there is a chocolate cake. The question presupposes the existence of the chocolate cake. It presupposes that there is a chocolate cake. So in fact, none of those B sentences presuppose the sentence at the top. Let's look at one more example. So this time the presupposition is Mike smashed the television. And the question is whether or not each of these sentences presupposes that fact. Okay? And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video and then yourself put a little maru or a batsu, a circle or an X, to indicate whether each one of these presupposes Mike smashed the television. Okay? So I'll wait. Go ahead. Pause. No, really. Pause. Okay, let's take a look and see whether you recognized those utterances that include a presupposition that Mike smashed the television. So with the A sentence, did Mike smash the television? Does that presuppose that he did? Does the speaker who utters that question believe it to be true that Mike smashed the television? The answer is we don't know. Could be or couldn't be. So there's no presupposition. It does not presuppose the truth that Mike smashed the television. How about B? When did Mike smash the television? Well, in this case, it must be true that Mike smashed the television, because if you're asking when it happened, well, that presupposes that it happened. Okay? The speaker knows that Mike smashed the television. He or she only doesn't know when he did it. The C sentence. I was eating popcorn when Mike smashed the television. That also presupposes Mike smashed the television, because the speaker is explaining what he or she was doing when Mike smashed the television, which makes clear that he did. How about D? Why did Mike smash the television? Well, this also presupposes the truth of Mike smashed the television. The speaker knows that Mike smashed the television, but just doesn't know why, and therefore asks the question, why did Mike smash the television? E. I don't understand why Mike smashed the television. Here again, the sentence presupposes that Mike smashed the television. The speaker knows he did it, but doesn't understand why. How about F? I wonder if Mike smashed the television. Now, in this case, the speaker doesn't know. The speaker doesn't know the truth or falsehood, so this does not presuppose that Mike smashed the television. G, I wonder how Mike smashed the television. Now that's a little bit different because in this case, the speaker knows he did it, but he doesn't know how he did it. So there's something different between I wonder if and I wonder how. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the sentences that include the presupposition all include question words like how, why, when. So this shows us that question words can be used to signal presupposition of meaning. Okay, well, we'll stop there for the discussion of presupposition. And then in the next video, we'll look at pronunciation.